In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus gives several guidelines and teachings for the people who have gathered to hear him. One of the teachings is that of turning the other cheek that we can read in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. If we read the verse in Luke that is on the screen, the understanding is that if someone slaps you, then you should turn the other cheek and allow the person to slap you again. While we can understand why non-Christians hold this view due to their lack of biblical understanding, it is surprising to see many Christians say the same thing. In this video, I will explore this verse and its meaning to uncover the real interpretation of what Jesus actually meant. In almost all churches, this verse is taught as if it's the most important commandment and a qualification of being a Christian. In many churches, you are considered as a saint if you get beaten up, and you are considered as a sinner if you fight back. Many Christians even prohibit learning or practicing self-defense against aggression since they hold on to the same meaning of turn the other cheek. But having said that, I have a problem with this interpretation since I feel that it contradicts God's nature as revealed in the Bible and through His only Son Jesus Christ. So let's dig further on this to see if we can discover anything new. So, in order to understand the message, we need to put ourselves in the audience and get the correct context. The verse starts with a reference to the Old Testament law of eye for an eye that we can read in verse 38. The people are asking Jesus about how the eye for an eye law can be applied to their current situation under the Roman occupation. They are asking Jesus how God's retributive justice system will work and what they can do to seek justice. Jesus gives 3 examples and solutions on how this Old Testament law or the eye for an eye can still be applied to their current situation. These are the turn the other cheek, give your cloak and walk the extra mile that we read in the next few verses. This is the context that we should keep in mind when we read these verses and try to interpret them. Most problems that Christians face in the world today is self-inflicted because they do not understand the correct context and take such verses randomly without understanding. Now let us read Matthew chapter 5 verse 39. You will see that Matthew is recording more details about this verse and he writes that it is the right cheek. When we compare this with the verse in Luke, we find that Luke is giving a generic statement as compared to Matthew, who is recording a very specific information about the right cheek. Matthew, who was Jewish, immediately noted this as it is very important for the Jewish culture and recorded it. Luke, who was Greek, was primarily focusing on the Greek and the Gentile readers and did not cover this since it does not have any symbolism or understanding in the Greek culture. My view is that to correctly understand what Jesus meant to the audience, we should see it from a Jewish perspective since that is whom Jesus is addressing the sermon to. So, what is so important about the right cheek that Matthew is noting here? Now, think about how you can slap someone's right cheek. Most of us are right-handed. So, if we slap someone, the natural way to do it is to use our right hand and slap the left cheek of the other person. So, the natural expression of slapping someone is only to the left cheek. However, the verse says right cheek. Now, there are only 2 practical ways in which someone can slap you on the right cheek. The first method is if you use your left hand, but since most of us are right-handed, this is not a natural or instinctive practice. The second and the most likely way is to use the backhand of your right hand to slap the right cheek of the other person. I believe that this backhand slap is what Jesus meant and that is what Matthew has recorded. The forward hand slap or using the right hand to slap someone is an angry and instinctive reaction. The backhand slap is a slower and more deliberate action. The aggressor is intentionally using it against you and not reacting in a fit of anger or something like that. In Jewish culture, the purpose of using a backhand slap is to insult and shame the person and not to create injury. Backhand slap was commonly used by a superior person against an inferior person and was not used against equals. For example, Romans frequently used a backhand slap against Jewish authorities to show that they are in charge and they are superior to the Jews. This type of slap was also used by masters on their slaves to show that they are superior and also indicates that they don't want to get their hands dirty. Do you get the picture now? Jesus was referring to this type of backhand slap that is a deliberate insult and not physical pain. Most of the audience can immediately relate and understand the significance of this verse because, as I mentioned earlier, they saw and experienced these things from the Romans. Backhand slap was considered such a great insult that there was actually a law that was in effect during Jesus' time. In the Mishnah or the local Jewish law, as you can read, if you slap someone using a backhand slap, you need to pay double the fine as a normal slap. Slapping on someone's left cheek causes greater physical pain but was considered as equality. Slapping on someone's right cheek using a backhand is less painful, was considered as great humiliation and insult. Do you see the difference between this? By the way, the word zuzim in the law is a type of Jewish coins that is equal to half a shekel in value. Let's revisit the complete context of this verse to understand this better. Jesus is actually talking about the law eye for an eye that we can read about in Leviticus and Exodus. The Jews were frequently slapped on the right cheek by the Romans, who did not really care as they were masters and rulers over them. As we have seen earlier, it's a great insult and they wanted justice from the Romans. Jesus gave them the most brilliant solution ever possible, that is, to turn the other cheek. How is this a solution to the insult due to the slap on the right cheek? And why is Jesus asking to turn the other cheek? You see, if the person who is slapping is Jewish, then there is a Jewish law that we have seen earlier in the Mishnah to take that person to court and get justice. Now, what to do if it is the Romans who are occupying the country? In this case, you cannot take them to court as they will probably insult you more. You cannot slap or hit him back as that would mean immediate death penalty. The best way is to turn to the left cheek so that at least he will slap you as an equal person and not as an inferior person. This is exactly what Jesus is telling in this verse. Turning the other cheek against the Romans is a brilliant solution to be treated as equal with the Romans. Even though the Jews risked getting painfully slapped again, they can at least go back with the sense that they are treated as equal. You see, God does not want you to be killed unnecessarily by a rebellion with a superior army, but at the same time, He does not want you to be ashamed or treated as inferior. This interpretation matches God's nature and wisdom that we have understood in the Bible and also in all of our videos. God Himself will provide justice and redemption against superior enemies and does not want us to take unnecessary risks. Self-defense is a right that God allows for all. If we read Luke chapter 22, we see that Jesus asks His disciples to buy swords. We can see that 2 swords are sufficient against thieves, but not against Roman soldiers. So the purpose of 2 swords is purely self-defense and not for rebellion. Jesus wanted the people to prepare for their journey, including the capability for self-defense, but not to attack or fight Roman soldiers. If Jesus wanted us to be pacifist and get beaten up, then this incident of the 2 swords is a theological problem. Being prepared for self-defense, avoiding practical danger and things like that has God's approval. In summary, we can see that this teaching of Jesus has a lot of practical advice to us. The application of this verse is not limited to physical slaps or attacks. There are many cases where there are non-physical backhand or insulting slaps given to Christians. Some examples of backhanded slaps given are government laws that goes against Christians, anti-Christian bias in schools, jobs, and so on. Simply put, if it is possible to legally challenge the attack, do so by all means. Else, if you are a slave, then at least show that you deserve to be treated equally, even if it hurts you.
Thank you for watching. Make sure to drop a like and also subscribe to our channel.